Welcome to the Waymaker Church Bonus Podcast. The heart of the house is that these messages would help you encounter, live for, and advance the kingdom of God. Enjoy this month's bonus podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to this month's bonus podcast. Excited to be with you guys today. Today in the studio you got Pastor Joel, Marcus, Mackenzie, and myself, Josh. We're glad to have you guys with us today. We genuinely hope that these things are a benefit to you, and if so, do us a favor, like, subscribe, share, all the things that make this stuff go further. Help us to make it go further. We'd greatly appreciate that. That said, today we're going to jump into a topic that probably isn't as commonly talked about. The title to this month's podcast is Lament is Worship Too. And what do we mean by that? We're kind of giving God our pain honestly. And that's not always a simple thing to do. But kind of as we're diving into this, just kind of this idea to kind of be thinking through as we're listening to this is the reality that lament actually invites God into your suffering. And so I know in life, we all have ups, we all have downs. Like we long for the good times and the happy times and just everything's happy-go-lucky. We long for that. But reality is sometimes life just smacks us in the face. There's unexpected things that transpire. There's unexpected loss that transpires. And what do we do in those moments? And as we were discussing the idea of getting together today and recording this, I kind of brought it to the attention of like, this seems to be something that recently around me, a lot of people have just been vocalizing of just a matter of going like, hey, it just seems tough right now. It's hard right now. It seems like no matter what direction I turn, as like it's an uphill battle. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I'm at. And so there's a measure of all this that we're going like, I just find myself struggling. I find myself stuck. And so like there's just a measure of grief. There's a measure of sorrow in the midst of what they're dealing with. And really that is what lament means. It's a passionate expression of grief or sorrow, or sometimes it's just an expression of regret and disappointment as well. And we can see that in just a voicing of complaints and whatnot. So what do we do with that? How do we invite God into that situation? So that's kind of our topic of discussion today, and I'm going to kind of just open up the floor and been like, we had a great conversation about this earlier, just talking about the idea of it, and that's why we want to bring it today. But let's dive back into that.
I think just kind of a random thought as we jump into a topic like this. One of the things I feel like we have to get better at doing in the local church and just as believers, especially in America, is to get better at learning to discuss and talk about things that we don't like to. We kind of have that ostrich mentality a little bit in our culture to like stick our head in the sand and try to avoid the things that we really honestly need to talk about a lot of times. And so my desire today would be to encourage you to learn to get comfortable with the uncomfortable things, because that's the place where we actually grow. And this is definitely one of those topics because, you think about disappointment, grief, those are things that we all experience. Mm-hmm. We hear a lot about mental health in our culture mm-hmm. and, or the lack of mental health, and we're struggling in different areas. And I think it's because often we do avoid topics like this. And so, like, how do we have, like, a healthy expression, like, in those moments when the disappointment or the grief comes? And that's definitely what we're going to dive into today, and just super looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the scriptures talk about carrying one another's burdens and taking your burdens to Jesus and all of those things. And I feel like in our time and in our society right now, a lot of people reserve that for their private counselor, which I'm not against counseling at all, or they just bottle it up, right? And so there's no genuine expression sometimes of your emotions and of your grief and what you're going through with your local body, with your local church, or even with Jesus, And I hear a lot of people say this too when it comes to this. It's like, well, Jesus, he knows what I'm going through, and while that there may be some truth in that, like there is also power in speaking those things out and getting those things out. And so I feel like kind of that's maybe where a lot of people find themselves today. It's like they're either bottling it all up, or they're just kind of waiting for their counseling session, which again is not bad. But there's people in your church that they're there for you, mm-hmm. and also there's Jesus, mm-hmm. and going to his feet and really pouring your heart out. Like that's a healthy way to handle it.
For sure. Seems like the scripture where he talks about to bear one another's burdens. It kind of seems to be a little bit of a lost art in our performance culture. Because we don't like the the things that don't look perfect. We don't like the things that don't look put together. And I think that performance mentality a little bit that, and we can put it under the guise of excellence or whatever else, to package it however we want to. But I do think that sometimes it is a little bit of a lost art where we learn to bear one another's burdens, because life isn't simple. It's not easy. There's just things that don't go the way we expect them to go. And so in those moments you talk about within the local church, you do need to have relationship with people in order to be able to express. And I actually think that's probably the other side of that, is we have an isolationist culture that is no longer built on relationships. And so a lot of times we don't feel comfortable to go talk to people, probably because we don't have a relationship with them in the first place. And so a lot of times you'll hear us talking about getting involved in serving or small groups or just things like that. Part of that reason is creating that biblical community where you can go find that place to have a trusted voice that will listen and then maybe speak into your life or pray with you or whatever, not just pray about you.
Right.
That's where a lot of that stuff matters as well.
Do y'all think a lot of that came out of COVID?
I think it was there prior to it.
You
I
think
just
so?
think that really put the spotlight on it.
Got elevated.
Yeah, I just kind of was like, it was, I think, as much as that season was not fun in any way, shape, or form, I think it was the great revealer. It revealed the condition of a lot of things that were out there. But I think you hit it on the head, and the idea of, like, I think sometimes we underestimate the power of even a 30-second prayer. It's almost like, I don't want to bother him with it. I want to bother so-and-so with it. And so we'll, and let's just be real. There's a lot of times we have a hard time trusting people with what we're dealing with because it seems like it's going to be in everybody else's ear before the day's end. So we'd rather not tell anybody. And we only save it for a counselor. And again, I'm not against counseling. But in my opinion, if you're going to get counseling, make sure it's a Christian counselor. We don't need to fill our head with the world's ideas and try to fight a spiritual battle by carnal means.
Right.
And then we find ourselves in the same situation, typically omitting God from the situation. And really that's kind of the idea, is like, how do we bring God into this conversation? How do we bring him back to the focus of, where his word is enough, and we're reaching out to our brothers and sisters that are in Christ, that have the ability to point us back to the word. Here's another thing, as you were saying that earlier, that crossed my mind real quick. Nobody likes to be corrected. So if part of the reason we're dealing with some sort of lament, some sort of grief or sorrow or circumstance that has put us in that situation, and it's because we did something or didn't do something, and now we're being corrected, it's almost like we'd rather not hear it. I don't know. It's intriguing when you really look at it, because it's almost like we're more comfortable dealing with a constant state of sorrow than we are getting free from it, because we know how to manage the hurt. We don't know how to walk in the freedom. And I think God's actually calling us to the freedom. There's a lot of people I know, they'd rather stay stuck because they know how to manage stuck. Yeah. We're going, no, there's a better life than stuck. So how do we bring God into the lamenting so that we can get unstuck,
It would seem a lot of times that hurt provides us a kind of a veil or a wall to hide behind. And we can kind of, at some point, it's like there's genuine hurts and things that happen. But I do think sometimes you can also use it as an excuse, to put up these artificial walls as to why we can't, instead of walking forward by faith and, stepping into the realm of what's possible. Because Scripture tells us with God all things are possible. Right? He has the capacity to touch every area. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting topic today, and let's jump to it.
Well, I mean, as we are kind of diving into this again, just to reiterate the title, lament is worship too. So giving God your pain honestly. How do we give him our pain honestly? And if we look at it, like something we could all grab onto here is lament is actually biblical. We actually have a book of the Bible called Lamentations. It's not crazy long, because thankfully God was over his lamenting period pretty quick. But, but the reality is, like, lament is biblical, and it's actually like it's expressed frequently. You can see it actually a lot in Psalms, but even as you read Jeremiah, he means the weeping prophet, but he just said, like, guys, will you just get it together? Can you not hear me? The Lord is saying these things. What's going on? Why won't you listen? Like, you can almost hear that grieving heart on the inside of him. Like, if you would just listen, things would be different. So it is biblical and is frequent. Psalms 42, if you read it in verses 3 through 5, and this is paraphrased here, but it says, "Why, my soul, are you downcast?" So what are we recognizing there? There are times that the soul is downcast. Right. What do we do with that? I mean, it transpires. How do we respond with that?
Let's bring that to like a modern terminology, right? You're thinking like, why my soul are you downcast? We're like, what? Sometimes we can look at that. Now remember the soulish realm, right? The soul of a man is made up of the mind, will, and the emotions. And so it's that internal place where a lot of times, and that's often really, I think, what we would refer to as our mental health. It's that soulish realm where we deal with a lot of the different things. We deal with those unexpected moments or frustrations or disappointments, areas of grief. And grief, obviously, we can talk about a lot of times with loss. We could definitely think of that, say, within maybe losing a close friend or a family member like to death or something like that. But I think there's a lot of times we grieve a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Like we can grieve, maybe a friendship that didn't work out. We can grieve, a job that didn't go the way. We can grieve decisions that our children are making or our grandchildren, somebody's going astray. Like there's all kinds of things where grief shows up. And those are areas where, when it's talking about, why my soul are you downcast, that kind of understanding of downcast deals with something like depression, or that those anxious thoughts on the inside, like why are you so downcast? And what he's talking about is why are you so downcast internally, right? So it's dealing with that internal posture, because it's the internal man that has to set the trajectory for the outer man, right? We talk about it a lot that where the mind goes, the man follows, and so it's like if we allow ourselves to get in that discouraged place for too long and we're downcast internally, then we can struggle on the lens that we view life through and our ability to be resilient or to have hope or, walking by faith. And so we have to be mindful in that. And really the essence of today is about learning to invite God into the moments where we feel like we're suffering. Mm-hmm. And so again, definitely not one of those areas we like to talk about, but certainly is an important thing to learn to do.
Right.
Yeah, I love that we have the example in Psalms because literally, we're getting a kind of a zoom into somebody's prayer life, and they made them into songs. That's what Psalm is like a hymnal book basically. Like if we can modernize it a little bit, it's like people pouring out their heart before God and let that be the example. You know what I mean? And as we were sitting talking about it earlier, the example that came to my mind when it's like it's biblical and it's frequent. It's when Jesus was on the earth, there was Martha and Mary, and they asked for Jesus to come from kind of him doing ministry because their brother's dying, and Jesus kind of waits a couple days. Obviously, he knew what he was doing, but they wait a couple days. They do ministry where they're at, and then they decide, okay, now we'll go to Martha and Mary. Well, at that time, Lazarus had already passed, and we kind of get a real and raw moment with the two sisters. Like they are kind of a little upset, that Jesus didn't leave right when the messenger got to him, and it kind of shows a real expression of what lamenting can look like. Like it is going to be like nasty crying, and it's like deep grief and pain, and in that case, it was something that they couldn't control. There's other examples in the Bible of things that people could have controlled, and they're having to grieve their decisions. It's another example of different things we have to grieve. The example that comes to mind is 2 Samuel chapter 24. David takes a census. It's a decision that he made. Mm-hmm. And because of the decision that he makes, God brings about punishment because he asked him not to do that. And so the angel of the Lord is striking people down, and David's like, will you stop? Like it's me, I'm the one that sinned. And he goes to make an offering at the altar, and the guy that was selling the offerings, the animals, basically was going to give him one for free. And he said, I'm not going to sacrifice that which cost me nothing. Like, let me pay you. And so he grieved, because of a decision that he made. Mary and Martha are grieving because of a thing that just happened naturally. Their brother got sick and he died. And we see kind of some real examples in the Bible. David and Moses lamented, and people cried out to God. And I think, Josh, you said it when we were chatting about it earlier, like in all of that, though, what you see is like God hears the cries and responds to those cries.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thankful for that. For some reason, I don't know why in our humanity we have a tendency to forget the fact that he hears those cries. It's almost like, as Pastor Joel was just alluding to a little bit ago, we forget that he's there, and so we bottle it up. Or maybe we don't want to pour it out because pouring it out might cost us something. You know what I mean? Like on the fly this weekend, this past weekend we had a tent crusade. And at the end, it was one of those like, hey, as they sing and worship and we're going to have altar time. And I was just like, oh boy, but then so the song immediately jumped in my head of, oh, come to the altar. I was just thinking that as we were ending our worship practice time. And the words of those songs, like, are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. And basically it's that calling of, oh, come to the altar. But there's something sacrificial that has to happen at the altar. There's something that we have to walk up there and lay something down. God hears our cry, but he's also going, but you don't have to hold on to that. And I wonder how often we hold on to something that he's just going, that's not yours to carry. Never has been. Did it transpire in your life, in your situation? Is it something you are walking through? Sure. But I'm not asking you to hold it. I'm seeing you through it. And I think that we struggle with that ideation there is the fact that there's a lot of times our growth happens as we walk through it. We sometimes we like to see a thunderstorm come by. Sometimes we want the rain. We're like, oh man, I wish it would just rain. But then you see those violent thunderstorms and you watch it go across the horizon and you're just like, I'm glad it stayed over there. But man, that was a lot of lightning. Wasn't that really cool to see, but not have to experience? It's like we want the fruit of the rain hitting the ground without going through the storm. And I think sometimes in our own life, it's like we want the fruit of being on the other side of the season without having to go through the season. But there's something said about going through it, going through the storm, and he's walking there with you. And so, yes, he hears your cry, but maybe he's not asking you to carry it. But what does that mean? That means we're going to have to lay something down. So it could have been something that we're dealing with, like a death in the family. Yes, that transpired. But again, and I always fall back to this, and God's always kind of worked through my ideation of identity dynamic. But yes, it transpired in your life, but it's not who you are. No longer. It's not the definition of who you are. It's just something that happened. It's another tick in the testimony box, And if we're not careful, we'll hold on to it, and it now becomes not just the motive, but the underlying statement of why we do what we do. Or why we are who we are. And we can write that off as like, well, I guess that's just who I am. What if it's not? What if it's not supposed to be? What if we're supposed to lay it down? But the hard thing is it's sacrificial, laying it down, right? Sometimes it's a sacrifice of praise. Sometimes it's a sacrifice of going, God, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what to do. I'm at the end of myself. And then God finally goes, cool. That's where I've been looking for you to be the whole entire time. And now that you're at the end of yourself, you want to do it my way? You're just like, I guess, But again, we don't like that correction dynamic very much. Like, I never looked forward to getting my report card because I figured there was going to be something that I was going to have to like own up to or explain or get in trouble for. We talked about it on Sunday. This needs improvement in the talking dynamic. It was a real thing. It really hurt. And let's just be real. I'm lamenting right now. But decisions made.
That's right. No, we were, conversing about it. You kind of mentioned Mackenzie about it being like kind of the bubble analogy.
Oh yeah.
And I was saying it'd be cool to maybe dive into that.
Yeah.
So
the Lord showed me this a couple years back and it was even actually revolving around mental health, and everything of walking through what that looks like and walking through with it with the Lord. But a lot of times too, what happens is it's either the bubble is formed by the Lord or we form it. And what that means is that a bubble is placed around you and your situation, circumstance, and your feelings. And what you see is it's a clear bubble. But with a bubble, it's not just clear. You get the little waves and motions of the different colors of purple and blue from the actual quote unquote soap or stuff that is made up to make it actually be a bubble and hold form. And so with that, as it's moving, sometimes it's either there's a fog that's inside the bubble to where you can't even see through the bubble, or that little haze of changing of color in the bubble is actually distracting you to see further outside of your circumstance. And the beauty of it is that the Lord's on the outside of that bubble saying, I still see you. I still have you. I still have protected you and is taking care of you. If only you can push through, and either he will pop that bubble with you, for you, or give you the strength to do it. And what that means is that sometimes you're placed in that bubble to be able to be shaped and formed, that then by the time you are reaching out, you are even stronger and more sane even, and at a bigger strength and peace to say, okay, we just went through that, and the Lord's so good in that. And he didn't leave you, and he wasn't just looking away and thinking, oh, she's surrounded by a bubble of her whole mess, or all the depression or the anxiety or the PTSD, whatever the case. It's saying, no, he's still watching you, because it's still see-through. It's a see-through bubble. So unveil the eyes and say, Lord, like, help me to see you through all of this, because that's the beauty of the bubble. It's see-through. You can still see. It's not fully covered. It's not that you are just trapped away unnoticed or unseen. Like, you are still there, and the Lord is still seeing you. And a lot of times our flesh gets caught up saying, it feels nice to be in the lamenting stage, and it feels nice to grieve, and it feels good to stay there, but we're not supposed to stay there. The Lord calls us out and through it to go past the quote unquote the bubble, because he is still bigger and greater, and that's the beauty of it. He's bigger than the bubble, and he's bigger than the things that are inside of the bubble that we can't even see. And so,
and I feel like that's actually part of the, you talked about sometimes it's us, maybe it's our decisions, right, that put us in there. But sometimes it can be, God that actually leads us there. And we talked about Jesus, immediately he's filled with the Spirit. And what does the Spirit do? Drives him into the wilderness to fast and to be tested for 40 days. And it reminds me that this idea really of whether it's pain or adversity, whatever you want to call it, even in the internal man, and that internal struggle is something that is common to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's important to recognize, because I think a lot of times we can carry this mentality kind of like Elijah, like, oh God, I'm the last one. It's just me. I'm the only prophet, the only one standing for you. And of course, once he's in the cave, God's like, yeah, about that. I've got 7,000 others, that haven't bowed the knee. But I think sometimes when we get, so just internally focused and we get overwhelmed by those things, and we don't, because really the essence of this idea of lamenting is it's an invitation to the Lord to come into where you are.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times in our independent culture, we all experience things, but we try to go through it alone, and we try to just buck up and shoulder up, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to whatever. And some people, maybe they have some skill sets to press through on their own. Others may end up walking wounded for the rest of their life,
right? Because
they've tried to do it on their own. And really the whole essence of it is it's like whether he's the one that led you there, or whether you're the one that put you there, and whatever that, grief or sorrow or disappointment, you name it, like it may show up and it's there. The key in all of this, and really what we want to get to, is really about the invitation, right? It's we want to learn that however we got there doesn't matter, because sometimes if the Lord is the one that brought us there, there's an opportunity. You talked about correction. Sometimes it's also just training and instruction, and in order for us to step through it and to gain maturity and to grow deeper, to know his heart and to know, his desire for our life and really how he views us. If we never go through things, if we're never tested, if we never go through a hard time, how are we ever truly going to know? It's one thing to be able to talk about something. It's another thing to have lived it and allowed him to walk, you invite him into it, you walk through it and you come out the other side. And there's something, that's that refining process. That's where we've been tried by fire. And we find out that what we have is his word is actually faithful and true. But if you're never tested, you're not going to know. You may hear from others that it's faithful and true, but there is something about having your own testimony. And, we've walked through that again, especially the unexpected death of our father back in, November of 2021. I look back and, we're a couple days post, of him departing this earth, and we're having to go to his house to look for documents. And I legit remember being afraid to run, walk down the hallway. It was such a crazy experience. And it was silent in the house. I remember I couldn't take it, and then I couldn't figure it. I had to ask my brother, who's always technology savvy, because I'm not. I couldn't figure out how to turn on and get sound out of the stinking sound system, which was a janky setup for sure.
In all fairness, he had it set up real weird.
Yeah, but you knew how to do it still, and that says a lot about our current dynamic. But but it was one of those things, and I remember he put on. I just need worship. I couldn't stand the thoughts in my head, and inadvertently, essentially, what we did was we gave an invitation. honestly, in a moment of, at that point for me, and I'm sure for you as well, in a moment of like my deepest pain that I had ever experienced, with just losing those core people in your life so close together. And I remember the song "Wait on You." Mm-hmm. Man, it's one thing to sing it when things are going good. It's another thing when you don't have the words. But that invitation, God shows up and you come out the other side and it's just like, man, like, you realize too, that's a sacrifice of praise that like we'll never have the opportunity to give again. Yeah. Not that I really want to either, but but it's those types of moments where, to me, it's like awful experience, horrible moment of grief, but it was also a moment where because of the goodness of God, it's like your roots go, because you give that invitation, like, Lord, I don't know what else to do. I just need you. You invite him in, and because he walks with you through the valley of the shadow of death, Psalms 23. And you find out that there's measures of his presence that you'll only get there. You're not going to get it on the mountaintop. You get it in the valley in that nasty moment. But he leads you through it. Yeah. You come out the other side, and it's like your roots go that much deeper. It's your faith is that much stronger. And you're thinking, man, if I can walk through this, and that's what gives you hope for the future, because you're like, man, if I can walk through this, if I can survive this, it's like the worst day of my life. And you're thinking, man, what else can we go through? And it shifts, I think, a little bit of the internal perspective. And that's really kind of what this is about. It's like, we're talking about that honesty. It's okay, to realize that you're not okay. It's not okay to stay there and to let it become a replacement for identity is what you were talking about, Pastor Josh, earlier. It's like we just can't let it become a replacement. Like we have to know who we are. We have to know whose we are. And then bring that invitation. The Lord enters in, and as we turn these things over to him, and maybe it is through a conversation with a counselor, maybe it's a conversation through a trusted friend. And that's the other part too. Can I encourage you, if somebody shares deep information and things and they let you behind the veil in their life, please don't use that information against them. That's right. Have enough character and integrity to cover them because they bared their heart and their soul to you. And then please don't do like they did back in the day where like you had to go tell 15 people and call it just for the intercessors. It really was just gossip. Yeah. Let's just not do that. Be like, hey, we need to pray about. Like, don't go down that road. Learn to cover. Learn to be a safe space, and then that way. And then don't just tell them you'll pray. Maybe actually pray with them and pray for them, because that's another one of them things. Yeah, always pray right there. Mm-hmm. Don't ever say I'll pray for you later, because chances are. Yeah, it becomes a Christian cop-out a lot of times. Yeah, you'll forget. Yeah, and honestly, like it's not even. Sometimes it's not even malicious or with ill intent. It's like you just go about your day and you forget. If I can give anybody any advice that was given to me years ago, just pray on the spot. Yeah, Yeah, then you're not a liar later on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there is power in a 30-second prayer. Yeah. Like even yesterday, after service, I had a lady come up after first service and was just like, "Do you have time to pray with somebody?" Actually, in my heart, I was like, no, but one of our core values is we will stop for God and stop for people. That's right. And so, like, legitimately, like, it was kind of a transition moment. My mind was somewhere else, but just stopped and prayed. And, had got conversation, told me some of the things that were going on in life, and was able just to pray. But in the midst of praying, it wasn't a long prayer, maybe a minute, maybe. But in the midst of praying, God just alluded to a couple different things in my life that I just put in the prayer. And she's just like, we didn't even talk about that. You have no idea. She said, thank you. And she walked away. I don't even know specifically what it was. But she's like, you had no idea. And you spoke directly to one of the needs I had. And I was just like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to brush it off like it's not a big deal. But on the flip side, you're going like, I don't even know what I said. I was just obedient to what he was saying on the inside while I was praying. And so I think we can underestimate the power of that short prayer, that 30-second, that minute prayer. It's not long and thought out. It's not a prescription, a spiritual prescription you're reading. It's just a moment of going, all right, God, let's take a moment and pray for this because you're bigger than this situation. But as you're alluding to, I think there's this kind of weird dynamic, this unrealistic expectation of like this perfect life we're supposed to be living in. And so like, really there is a measure of lamenting as a form of worship where we literally just give it to him. You were just talking about, we just give it to him. Like, I don't understand why we have the need to feel, it's almost like, God, I don't want to be a burden to you. Or it's almost like, God, I don't want to let you down. But I'm going to tell you right now, you can't let him down because you were never holding him up. If you're holding up God, then you're God in your life. He's not. you're not his foundation, he's yours, you know? And so it's almost like we don't want to burden the Father with our burdens, when in all reality, he's like, if you'll just cast your cares on me, why? Because I care for you, you know?
Yeah, I can say it this way because, personal coach in my life basically told me this way, that it's the way that it comes across and kind of the way you were explaining it a second ago is almost like a sense of humility, but it's a false humility that's actually pride. Mm-hmm. And that was a nice one to get on a coaching call one time. But it really is that. It's like basically, Lord, I don't want to bother you. Basically what you're saying is, in pride, I've got this. I don't need you.
Yep.
And so that's never a good thing, just generally. And you talked about the perfect life. I think we talk about a lot the American gospel versus the the gospel of the kingdom. I think that one of the ripple effects of kind of the seeker-sensitive message over the last 20, 25 years, and especially just the happy, wealthy, blessed, was an intent to draw people that were seekers. They were seeking, right? They were trying to be sensitive to those that were seeking a relationship with God. And I think that the ripple effect that maybe in the moment you just don't think about, but now we're seeing the effect of it, is that it built a theology that isn't fully true. It's like, will you be blessed when you serve Jesus? For sure. But blessing doesn't mean that we're void of like tough times and things like that. It doesn't mean that we're going to be void of adversity. There's those moments where we're going to experience difficult times, and we need him to be able to walk through it.
Right.
And so, interesting.
Yeah. No, there's value to grasping onto that.
When I think about the altar as well, I know we've thrown that out a lot. In the Old Testament, nothing was wasted at the altar. When they made a sacrifice, it was all consumed. And I just hope, Pastor Joel, what you were saying can be an encouragement to somebody. Like, it sucks to walk through that stuff. It does. Like, if we could just throw it out there, like walking through, whether it's God allowing you to walk through something happened out of your control, or it was a decision that you made, whatever it may be, like, no matter what, like, it's not easy to walk through. But if there's one encouragement, like, the Lord uses all of it. And on the other side of it, it's like you said, it's like, wow, I didn't know I didn't know I was going to be able to make it through. But it's by God that I made it through. It's that Philippians chapter 4. I went through the highest of highs, and I've been through the lowest of lows. Paul literally shipwrecked 3 times, like bitten by a poisonous snake, all the things. And he says, but in everything, it's Christ who gives me strength. And so basically what he was saying is, like, my life is a living sacrifice. I am literally myself, putting myself on the altar. And I know that because I'm doing that, God, he doesn't waste anything. He uses everything. And ultimately at the end of the day, it's for my good. It's for my benefit. It may not feel that way now. Something else he writes to the Corinthian church in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, he's kind of giving some just encouragement. But there at the end, he says, therefore, we do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, our inner person is being renewed day by day. He says, for our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So we do not focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
Yeah. And that's one of those things to think about, is that those moments of adversity, the tough times, those types of things that you're talking about, those are actually just unique opportunities. And I think that for a lot of things, I'm noticing just kind of getting that middle age of life, how much of it really is the need for those mindset shifts. Mm-hmm. And you realize, like, how important, like, where we say where the mind goes, the man follows. Having that proper mindset towards adversity, or when you're going to go through the tough times, of like, making it pre-decide. And how do we pre-decide? We pre-decide through repetition of life. It's the moments where you learn how to have daily devotion. It doesn't matter if you feel it. It doesn't matter if it looks good or anything else. Those are the moments that are actually the preparation ground for when you have the moments of adversity. You have a rhythm already built in your life, and you know what to turn to. And in those moments, the adversity may reveal, maybe there's some missing pieces that we got to keep working on, but it also may reveal what you have and what you have gained, and the beauty of that. And what's amazing is then when you respond, God gets the glory. Mm-hmm. I started thinking about, again, like just a personal testimony, again, of that moment of worship. You think about it afterwards, you're going, gosh, like, in the worst moment of our lives, worship was the response. And that's just such a unique thing. Looking back, you're going, man, I didn't yell, didn't scream, I didn't cuss at God, I didn't turn from him, didn't turn my back on him, didn't lose the faith. Really, it was the opposite. Man, I didn't know what else to do. We worshiped that day. My mind was going crazy the next 24 hours as we were back at the hotel sifting through all the stuff. And I didn't know what else to do. My second thing was I went to the Word, and I laughed because I read the Psalms. I think I was on chapter like 20-something, and I finished 150 chapters of Psalms in less than 24 hours. Because every time my heart was overwhelmed, I'm like, the Bible, and I'm just going back to it. And so it's interesting because even those moments, they actually reveal some of the very things you're putting on the inside, which is kind of what you're talking about, even with the bubble. You have these moments where we actually need that. And of course, depending on what's revealed, we don't have to like beat ourselves up and, destroy ourselves because, oh man, turning into self-destructive. I should have done this and I should have done that. And I'm just a miserable human being. No, it's just a revelation that, hey, we got more work to do, and being okay with that. And now we get on track. We dig a little deeper. We press a little harder. We invite him in more often, and it's just this process of growth that takes place over time. And I think that's one of the things, if there's anything from all of our conversations that I feel like hopefully it's an undertow, is Christianity is not necessarily a life of like pass or fail. It's not always just some gigantic test that, cosmic test that we're hoping to to pass. It's like, no, like it's an opportunity and an invitation to know him, to be known by him. And in the experience of our common humanity, of the highs, the lows, the good times, the bad times, do we respond in such a way that God gets the glory? When it's painful, do we invite him in? When it's good, do we invite him in? Just in all things that God gets the praise. And so even for stuff like this, it's just those importance of those moments of worship, praise, time in the Word. It literally always comes back to that. Those things are actually what help you to frame the proper mindset for the next test, for the next adversity, and then learn to love correction. I don't know why we have such a thing that correction is a bad deal. It probably comes back to identity. That we hear we did something wrong, and all we hear is I'm wrong, maybe. And so if that's you and you're listening to this, your identity is not resting in your performance, and it's in who Jesus says that you are. Get alone with him, allow his word to speak to your heart, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to learn things, and that's okay. That's part of the process. Like, don't let it define you. Your mistakes don't have to define you. They can help to refine you, and if we'll turn to the right thing and give an invitation. So
that's good. That's really good. Yeah. I think in any situation we can kind of take two approaches. Woe is me, or it looks like we're stepping into a new season. Same situation, just a matter of what viewpoint, what paradigm you're looking at it through. Woe is me, or okay, looks like we're going to have to change course.
I have a 100% like personal testimony for that one. I promise I'll keep it brief. Going into full-time ministry. We got our credentials in March of 2009. You went into full-time before I did, but I didn't go until August of 2011. I think you went in the year before or something like that.
October of 10, yeah.
Yeah, and so I remember about a year before I went in full-time, I was lamenting. I wouldn't call it that at the time because that's not my normal terminology, but I was just upset. I'm like, and I just cried out to the Lord, like, why won't you place me in full-time ministry? And you talk about different seasons. His immediate response, God doesn't answer every prayer super quick, but this one, it was like instant. And I just cried out in frustration. And his immediate response was, because you'll destroy people. And so that moment of revelation out of my frustration and really lament brought revelation that I needed. And that was that the way that I carried myself and the way I interacted with people wasn't healthy. And I needed to learn some things because the position at that point evidently was about me, misplaced identity, instead of about God's people, which is actually what the assignment was. and so I was just like, and during that time, I almost didn't go into ministry. I looked up to go do other things, be a firefighter. And legit, I just wasn't going to do what we're doing today. And so fortunately had an ear to hear, or else I may not be here sitting with y'all today.
Right. It's weird when you think about it that way, but that's the reality of it. What we do. Well, you'll hurt people. Oh, woe is me. Or, well, I guess I better figure that out.
And that's the thing. I could sit there and cry about it. Oh, I'm just the worst. I can't talk to anybody. Oh man, life is so hard, and I just don't know anything. And I've done all this studying, and that that's where we go to those complaint sessions and self-destruct. And we can do that. It's just foolish.
Right. I agree. And really, what that boils down to, and what all this boils down to, and actually truly the fullness of our faith walk boils down to. It's a matter of surrender. When something's brought to the table that we need to work on, that we're going through, whatever the case may be, what do we do with it? Do we hold on to it? Do we use it as justification as to why we're making decisions? Or do we just simply surrender and say, all right, God, you're saying it, so be it. What do we need to do next? And it really is, it seems difficult to get to that place because there's a measure of justification in our humanity, but God is calling us to more. So we're kind of looking at this dynamic and dealing with the idea in the heart of lamenting. Again, it is worshipful in the sense that God is asking us to give it to him and to be honest with it. If we were to kind of put some action items to this of like, okay, so how do we properly lament? I think one of the first things we can do is just simply reflect on the areas where we may be holding back from fully surrendering to God. What are those areas that we're saying either I don't want to bother you with this, or, it's almost like salvation dynamic where people are just like, I'll give you everything I'm comfortable giving you, not all of me. But if he's king, he gets all of it. He's not just butler. It's not butler Jesus. It's King Jesus.
And I think with that thought, if you're asking for the greater things of God, the greater things of God are on the other side of your surrender.
Mm-hmm.
You can't withhold from him and expect him to give you everything.
Right.
Like you have to lay it down. And I mean, whether it's the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. If you want the greater things of God, if you want the deeper things of God, the deeper intimacy with God to be used by him, you're going to have to lay it down at some point. And there is no other way.
Right.
It's just what it is.
It's very true. It's very true. Another thought in that is, reflect on the areas you're maybe holding back, and then maybe consider how you can cultivate a posture of honest lament and worship, even in the difficult circumstances. What do we do? How do we say it? Just to bring it to God and simply go, God, this is what I'm dealing with. It's not a surprise to you, but I'm going to say it out loud because I'm going to say it out loud. And just to go like, here's where I'm at. And God will go, I know, but thanks for saying it. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, I think there's a lot of times he's wanting us to come to the aha moment so we can give it to him. And so reflect, then consider how you can cultivate that posture. And then basically, if you're struggling with stuff, others are, encourage people to just come to the table. Just been like, hey, where are we at? What's going on? What can we pray about? You know how simple that is? Hey, man, how you doing? Is there anything we can pray about today? Yeah, man, I'm having a really hard time at work. Well, cool, let's pray about it. I mean, not cool that you're having a hard time at work, but that we have the opportunity to pray. What can we give God today? And trust him in it. And really, I believe in all of this, how lamenting turns into a form of worship is really, it actually helps us to grow our trust in him. Because when we rely on him and then he sees us through, we now go, you were there last time, you'll be there this time. Right? And the testimony of what he did is the spirit of prophecy. So he's done it here. We can do it again. Our testimony grows. We continue to be overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Like it's almost like it's exponential. It's compounding spiritual interest rather than linear in nature. So I don't know. This is one of those subjects again. You're just like, now you can see why Lamentations in the Bible was short. Like you don't want to hang out here too long, but it's one of those subjects we just got to deal with, So I want to remind you, lamenting is worship too. But I want to encourage you, give God your pain honestly. How? By inviting him into your suffering and laying it all down before him. All that said, again, we hope that this is an encouragement to you and a blessing to you. And if you find it helpful, share the information, and whatnot. And just let's continue to point people to Jesus. It's not about us in this room. It's not about the name of our church. It has nothing to do with that. It's all about getting people to that place where they're having that genuine encounter with the Most High. They begin to walk out that walk and live for him, and then take others on that journey and continue to advance the kingdom of God. So if you can help us advance the kingdom of God, we greatly appreciate it, sharing and all those things. And we look forward to hanging out with you next month on our next bonus podcast, talking about holy things. Y'all be blessed.
Thank you for listening to the Waymaker Podcast. To simply connect, or if this message ministered to you and you would like to support the ministry, you can simply go to waymakerchurch.org.